for Jordan Love, because all the other guys, you need to give them plays that they're a little over their head. You're going to experiment, put them out there, and okay, you got to put the heat on all Mac Jones, Justin Fields. Dude, you may be playing week 1. He's the only guy won't play. So this is just my prediction that Jordan will look pretty good this weekend. They're going to set him up on stuff. They're going to roll him to the side he feels comfortable with. He's going to get some first-team starters to play with. That's my prediction. Of all these guys, Jordan will look really good. The other thing is, I can't wait to watch Urban and Trevor Lawrence. I have no idea. When's the last time Jacksonville was interesting? I can't wait. I have no idea what they look like. So with that, we bring in TJ Hushmanzada, Fox Sports NFL analyst, joining us live. Oh, by the way, that's my theory. What the Packers will do, they'll set him up to succeed, get some positive, PR out of this. Let's not make him look like, he's bailing water. That's my guess on what Green Bay does. Realistic or unrealistic from your perspective?
Very realistic. And see, this is what's going to happen that I don't know if anybody has talked about. Nobody, not one NFL team, game plans for the preseason. I guarantee Matt LaFleur and those offensive coaches, they're game planning just a little bit because they want Jordan Love to look good.
Sure.
You never game plan for game 1. Only the third preseason game, you'll put a semi-game plan in. They're going to be ready for the Houston Texans. They're scouting that defensive coordinator. They're going to get with Jordan Love and say, expect this, expect that. This is how we're going to attack it. If Jordan Love wasn't in this position, it would be no game plan. I guarantee they're somewhat game planning because they want him to shine.
So it's interesting. I said yesterday that I just watch, and I do think, TJ, you did it for years. You can look at an athlete, and it does not take – I've asked coaches and players how long before you knew this guy could play or couldn't. In fact, I was talking to Frank Reich yesterday. He goes, I knew in the first practice Darius Leonard was going to be a star. Like, first practice, you're like, oh, my, his range, his length. So I watched Zach Wilson, and he's a quarterback. He's a kid. He's young. He looked small to me. He looked overwhelmed with the Jets. Now, it's not the end of the world. But what will you have to see, TJ, with Zach Wilson? What will you have to see for you to go, I don't know if this is going to work?
Yeah, I don't believe I'll get to that point this year. The Jets were one of the worst teams in football. It's very simple. Like, they don't have, or they didn't have last year, any skilled guys, and no disrespect to those dudes, that could start on any other team in the league. Not one receiver, not one running back, not one tight end would be a starter on any other team. So he's going in there with a bare cupboard. Now, Elijah Moore, he's a separation machine. He can create separation. But the fact that he got into camp late just shows me, as you would say, the Jets are dysfunctional. If they weren't, he would have been in there on time. But Zach is a good athlete, Colin, and so he's going to be able to use his legs. Like, he can really run. He's a really good athlete. And so if he needs to do that, that's what he will do. But the Jets are a bad team. He just needs to do his part, but it's going to be hard as a rookie. It's going to be hard for him.
So Joe Burrow, the reports, and Joe Burrow acknowledged this. He's coming off an injury, and it was a mangled mess. ACL, MCL, additional ligament damage. You tell me, you've had injuries, not a lot, but you've had them. What goes on upstairs when you get back on the field right off rehab?
Oh, you're nervous. That's for sure. You get out there, you don't trust it, you don't know. Especially like I never had an ACL reconstruction and like Joe's coming off of. But I can only imagine. Joe was hit a ton last year, a ton. And then finally, that last hit took him out. And so anytime he feels pressure underneath, up the middle at his legs, it's human nature. He's going to pull that leg. And I don't know what week it will be where he finally says, okay, I'm fine. But the Bengals need to be very careful with this. You might want to get him some live periods in practice. They're not going to touch him. or maybe just a series in the preseason just to kind of get him used to it. Because if he goes into a regular season game and he hasn't really had that full-on rush, he's going to do the same thing, because what's the difference between that and practice? The difference is they're just going to hit you and tackle you. And so you want to try to get him through that. That's a mental thing, and it's going to take time, and only he knows when that will go away.
So on Hard Knocks, between Mike McCarthy and Dan Quinn, we use swear words now like salt. We put it on everything. I mean, it was just, it was profane for the whole show. When you watch Hard Knocks, I always think McCarthy's acting like he thinks a football coach should act. It just feels odd to me. It's like forced. When you've watched all these Hard Knocks, do you take anything from it? You ever get little tells, little things you're like, oh, that ain't real. That ain't right. How do you as a player watch Hard Knocks?
I watch it as, they know the camera's around right now. Just certain things that they do and say, they're doing it because the camera's around. I believe as you get to the middle of Hard Knocks, they tend to forget the cameras around. But early on, they're very aware of the cameras, where they are, what they say. And then once the middle towards the end of the season gets there, they tend to forget. And so you start to see a little more transparency, a little more reality. And I think a lot of it early on, though, is, the camera's here. Let me do this for TV, so to speak.
Yeah. Jamal Adams, there but not practicing. Dwayne Brown, there but not practicing. My theory is with Seattle that Pete Carroll pushed for this Jamal Adams trade. And they gave up 2 firsts, a third, and a safety for Jamal Adams. And it'll look terrible if they don't get this deal done. So the Seattle Times has 2 reporters this morning that have said the Seahawks appear to be willing to move to sign Adams, but not the left tackle Dwayne Brown. And I'm like, time out. Left tackle, safety? But my belief is Pete Carroll, remember last year the defense was a mess, bottom half of the league. They had no pass rush. And I think Seattle and I like Jamal, but they went crazy on him. And now they're backed into a corner because they can't just bail on Jamal Adams. They gave up too much. Don't you think it's a little odd? Now, and I'll say this, Pete's a defensive guy. So it's not great for Pete's reputation when Seattle's defense stinks and Russell's carrying the franchise, right? And so, when I look at that Jamal Adams, Dwayne Brown story, and the reports are they're closer to Jamal Adams, I'm like, that feels like Pete Carroll pushed for that, and he's taking care of that because that matters more to him. Or am I over my skis on this? Is it just, Jamal's a better player? How do you view it?
No, when you give up what they gave up to get Jamal Adams, you have to sign him. It's that simple. And guess what? He knows it and his agent knows it. And so you're going to offer me this? No, you don't give up what they gave up to let him go after 2 years. You just don't do that. And so he knows he has him by the you-know-what. And so he's using this leverage. But they need Dwayne Brown. Dwayne Brown, although he's 36 years old, he's one of the best left tackles still in football. And the way the rules are, practice is not as tough and as strenuous as it used to be. He's going to be able to play at least 2 to 3 more years.
Good point.
Think with Pete Carroll being such an old school coach, he's probably looking at the age of Dwayne Brown and saying, I don't want to re-sign him. Practice, I was just at the Rams practice yesterday and just talking to the guys, man, that I played with or against that were younger than me but are still playing. Man, I can play 20 years in this league now. That's what they were telling me yesterday.
Wow.
Practice is just easier now. And so Dwayne Brown still has some tread left on the tires, and Pete Carroll needs to understand that, because without Dwayne Brown happy and in the fold, your season's going down the drain, and they know it, and Russell Wilson knows it.
By the way, that's a really good point. So Dwayne, I watch every Seahawk game. I still think he's great. I think he's I've met him one time in person. That stuff, just genetically, that's not the way I've ever seen another human. He's a mountain. And he's a really athletic left tackle with a really athletic quarterback. So with Russell moving around, you can't have this heavy-footed left tackle because Russ is changing directions. But that's a fascinating point, that the guys you talk to, and that's just because practice is easier now?
Yeah, it's not as strenuous, Colin. They're not running as much the coaches are taking care. At least I know the round. They're taking care of their players, and I'm sure Pete's doing the same. The most important day of the week is Sunday. Let's get the Sunday healthy, and the coaches realize that, and they're